What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? And yes, your eyes are not deceiving you. This is not Madden 26. It's Madden 27. The game is finally out. Yes, I know what you're gonna say. What happened to the Colts series? I kind of had with Madden 27 coming out and the videos not coming out the way that I wanted them to, and just at a very slow burn pace. I kind of had to scrap the series, unfortunately, as much as I didn't want to. The videos just weren't coming out consistently. But it's going to be a lot different from Madden 27. I'm very excited this year to provide all the content from Madden 27 and my MLB Show series. I know I only got one video out. That was like, what, two and a half months ago? But trust me, more videos are coming out. I know I say it all the time, but I'm really going to try to anchor down on getting content out more consistently this time as opposed to the past. Now, if you've seen the thumbnail already, which, I mean, you clicked on the video, you see the thumbnail, you already know what team we're going with. I didn't really know which team I wanted to go with for real bit for my franchise up until the game had came out. I was pretty stuck on a few teams like the Steelers, the one with maybe the Titans, the Saints, the Dolphins even. But ultimately went down to the Vikings, my glorious Vikings, for rebuild. Now, I've never actually done a franchise with the Vikings before, and I figured this was a pretty good and interesting year to go with them. Obviously, got Justin Jefferson. They got two superstar players, one X factor, but a few hidden development players. They're a very weak team defensively. Even the game considers them being a rebuild, by the way. But they're a pretty weak team defensively. Offense is where they're strong, so does that. I think this team has a lot of holes in it. If you realistically take out Justin Jefferson, there isn't not been a whole lot of talent coming out of this team. Now, for the Colts, last year, I believe I won the defensive genius for the Colts, but I wanted to try to go with something a little bit different. I decided to go with a developmental wizard. I felt like that kind of fits what I kind of want to do for the Vikings. The Vikings do develop some pretty decent talent. For the roster, obviously, Justin Jefferson being the biggest commodity, guys like Christian Darisaw. I hope I said his name right. Darisaw. So I think development wizard kind of just makes the most sense for what I want to build this team. We are going to continue with Trevor Bailey since he didn't really ever go that far with the Colts. I figured going with him just makes more sense. I gotta say, look at the drip. Man, the shoes. I like the shoes being purple. I didn't think they'd have a purple colorway with shoes, but I'll take it because it matches everything else we're wearing. Well, let's jump into Madden franchise mode. And I do gotta say, I do really love the UI this year with all the weekly hub, which is something you kind of have to pay attention to from what I hear. So don't skip out on this. So I'll make sure to remember not to skip out on this. But the UI looks a lot cleaner as a separate thing for game day, so it doesn't feel like everything's cluttered. Everything looks a lot cleaner and neater. I do love that a lot, especially with the standings and everything. Have a separate thing for Coach General now in the main menu. I don't think it was before. And this, I really like this mostly because of the contract setting screen that they have. I think that's really good. So now you don't have to go to team salary or go by player card. Now you just go to the contracts and just look at them separately. But let's talk about this team. And you can't bring up the Vikings without bringing up the hottest commodity there is Justin Jefferson. He is a 94 overall now. I think he started at 99 last year. I think. Don't quote me on that. He's into the team for 7 years now, and the one consistent thing is that he's always been a 1,000-yard player. Always getting the ball and taking big plays. The biggest difference in his stats from last year, he only saw the end zone twice, which is kind of insane for Justin Jefferson's standards. Also to note, he's played with 9 different quarterbacks since he's been in the NFL. I looked this up recently, so I kind of want to confirm it. So the lack of touchdowns could easily be because last year he played with a bunch of different quarterbacks: J.J. McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and Max Rosmer. So he didn't really have any real consistency last year with quarterback play. So you could argue that's why he didn't see the end zone that much. But hopefully he will this year. We want to get him way more touchdowns than he had last year. That too is just kind of egregious. I also want to point out he's only ever seen the playoffs twice in his 7-year stint, and he never has won a playoff game yet. So that's another goal. In being 27, he is getting a little older now, but Justin Jefferson's still in his prime. I think he realistically just needs a quarterback to help lead the way for him. And obviously receivers to kind of take the pressure off him, because without a good receiving pool, Justin Jefferson's going to get all the attention. Speaking of quarterback, the Vikings have one of the more interesting quarterback conundrum rooms in the league. start off with Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. They're the real battle for a quarterback, or lead quarterback this year. Kyler Murray was picked up on a 1-year short deal after it not really working out in Arizona. I wouldn't really say it was a lack of consistent play, more so than it was just injuries kind of piling up. 53 wins is kind of egregious for Kyler Murray, I will say that, and he's only a 75 overall at the age of 29. But I wouldn't really say it was inconsistent play. I don't think it was that terrible, but I think injuries have started kind of piling up on him in the late stages of his career. He just missed quite a few games in the last 3-4 years. So I think the Minnesota Vikings, with their quarterback issues, kind of decided why not take a chance on Kyler Murray, maybe get JJ McCarthy a little bit more motivation to try and play a little bit better, which we'll kind of talk about JJ McCarthy in a bit. Now in real life, the Vikings have decided to start Kyler Murray, at least per the preseason. As of this recording, the Giants and the Vikings go head to head in preseason week 1, so we'll kind of see how that goes, how Kyler Murray does, how JJ McCarthy will do. I'm more on the side of trying to start JJ McCarthy, but of course we'll have to see what happens during the preseason. Speaking of McCarthy, our other JJ on the team, this is now his 3rd year in the league. Now I would say a lot about him, but there's not a lot to say about him. He missed his entire rookie season with a huge injury, and he missed some time last season. He only played 10 games last year, and in those 10 games, 11 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He looked kind of good to start, but as the games started piling up, as the injuries started getting worse, he kind of started to play less consistently. So JJ McCarthy is more of a unproven quarterback still. Even though we said it last year, he's still kind of unproven because he hasn't proven that he is the future of the Vikings. 7 overall, he has a low awareness rating as well. As far as his arm is concerned, he has a solid arm. When I say it's better than Kyler Murray's, it can be. Obviously, you have Justin Jefferson that kind of help both of these guys develop, because he is one of the best receivers in the league, but it starts with them. It starts with them playing more consistently. I would like him to edge JJ McCarthy, but again, like I said, it just comes down to who ends up playing better between the two. You do also have Carson Wentz and Max Brosmer. Wentz, the former Philadelphia Eagle, also, you could argue, former Super Bowl champion, since he did win when the Eagles did end up winning the Super Bowl, although he did not play. That was Nick Foles. He is the longest vet on this team. After playing with the Eagles, he's been on a couple different teams since then, so he hasn't really found his home since he left Philly. And last year, he did play with Minnesota. It actually wasn't too bad for him. Look at his Philly stats. He was off the charts, the best he's ever played. But late stage of career, he's kind of mostly been a backup for the most part, and it's pretty much the same here in Minnesota. He didn't really look all that terrible last year for Minnesota in the few games that he did play. He's not really fighting for a starting spot, but he could still end up playing if guys like McCarthy and Murray just don't end up living up to their expectations or living up their end of the deal, which is just playing pretty well. Carson Wentz is the vet, so the plus side is that he can act as a mentor towards McCarthy and Murray, who are the two headliners for quarterback. That's kind of one of the big reasons why I play the Vikings, because the quarterback situation is very dire. Not extremely dire because McCarthy's only 23, but still. And finally, Max Brosmer. He did play his fair share last year for Minnesota due to obviously conflicting injuries around the rest of the team. He has not had a touchdown yet. He had 4 interceptions. And I believe one game he had 3 interceptions. I know because I watched that game. But he just did not look all that good. Don't quote me if it was 3 interceptions because I don't remember. But he hasn't really looked all that promising. At least last year, because that's the only year he really played. Being on his technically rookie deal, he's least likely to play. Is he someone we keep in the lineup? I think obviously. I mean, there's a big question of whether or not we maintain him given after the regular season roster. We're just missing 46 people. I don't know if he stays on the roster, but I'm pretty open to keeping him. Let's look at the offense now. The running backs, we do have a pretty decent running back tandem of Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. There's not really too much of a difference between the two. Jordan Mason's more of a power heavier back, while Aaron Jones is a little bit more shiftier than that. So it kind of takes off that Jordan Mason is a little bit more powerful, and they both have started on it. And they also both have a year left on their contract. Both kind of split a lot of the touches between each other, so there's no really discernible number one. If you ask me, I will likely be in the role even this year. I don't think there's really a discernible number one between the two, between Mason and Aaron Jones, so we'll probably just stick to that formula. I am also probably going to lower the run block sliders to make them even worse for us because it felt like it was too easy to run the football back in Madden 26. But that's probably the direction we're going to go with these two. But for the third spot, I'm leaning more towards Claiborne. It's going to be obviously if Scott and Claiborne kind of battling out for that potential third spot at the running back position. But I am leaning more towards Claiborne. He does have more years on him. He's a rookie this year, obviously. So yeah, more with him. Xavier Scott, he's only got 1 year left. He's a little bit older. So I am more pushing towards Claiborne. But like I always say, it kind of depends on who plays it better. But Claiborne is the longer tenured guy, at least in terms of longevity. So I'm banking on him to probably be the third spot for the running back position, but I don't know. But now for the receivers, not running back. We already talked about Justin Jefferson. What about the rest? Jordan Addison and Ty Felton still remain on the team. They didn't really have an amazing year. They did have their instances where they played really well, but nothing really to write home about as number 2 and 3 receivers at the time. I do really like these two personally as being the numbers at the time, number 2 and 3, but Ty Felton's probably going to drop down to 4 for the time being. Jordan Addison's probably going to stick to the slot. Ty Felton will be involved in the lineup pretty decently, being the technically receiver 3, receiver 4 somewhat, but you are going to try to get him his snaps. You know he does have a fall off the rest of the guys. The one acquisition that the Vikings did make was Juwan Jennings out of San Francisco. He does only have a year left on his deal, but he is the oldest receiver on this team. He still started on it. Like I said, he's more of a physical player, which I think can kind of fit the bill for what we need. Someone who can kind of make big time plays that's not Jefferson, and again, take the pressure off of Justin Jefferson, which I think is what we need on this team, since we can't have him doing it all by himself, because they could easily double him or whatever the case may be. So having Juwan Jennings be a potential number 2 to Justin Jefferson, or number 3, depending on where you kind of want to place him, I think is a good option to have for the Vikings. Like I said, it takes the pressure off of Justin Jefferson. For tight end, we got TJ Hawkinson. He was injured a little bit last year, so he didn't really play much all of last season, but I think he has been a solid acquisition from Detroit. Since he has joined the team, he's a little bit on the slightly older side. Again, another player with only 1 year left on this contract that's not guaranteed to come back. I can't say for sure he will. I don't love the tight end room we have outside of Hawkinson. Other than Bartholomew, I'm a pretty big fan of him. Josh Oliver, not so much. I'm leaning more towards Bartholomew. Josh Oliver will probably remain on the team, at least for this year, but I'm really pushing for Bartholomew to really progress into a solid piece. The rest of the two, not so much. Bartholomew didn't do much last year, didn't do much last year. So I'm really pushing for him to get a little bit more playing time this season. Josh Oliver, he was okay, but nothing too crazy after filling in for TJ Hawkinson for a little bit that he did. So what about the offensive line? We'll start with left tackle, and Christian, I'm hoping I say his name right, Darrisaw, I'm hoping I said his name right, superstar development. He is a little bit old, not too old at the age of 27. Offensive line stats are a little bit buggy. I don't know why, but I did do my little bit of research. He hasn't played too many games. He has been injured a bit here and there. Last season he only played 10 games, so injuries kind of have started to pile up for him. But for offensive line, then it's very easy for them to get injured because it happens too often, and things happen. Sometimes they're off for a long period of time, sometimes not so much, but a lot of time they kind of have to switch to offensive line. But Darrisaw is going to be one of our star O-linemen at left tackle. He's got the stats to kind of prove it, hence why our offensive line will, I think, be pretty solid this year. I don't think it's going to be too bad. In the draft, we also picked up Caleb Tiernan as a backup for Darrisaw in the event that he eventually does get injured. I don't know why I didn't turn this guy's voice down, but he does have hidden development, which I think is very interesting. He could be a star development player. I don't think he'll be star development. I think he'll probably only be normal development, but I am excited to kind of have him in the back as a second option if the Resaw doesn't really fit the bill. We got Dante Jackson at left guard, not a big center room though. But at right guard, we do have Will Fries, who I think is pretty okay. Have him out a 4-year stint, so he will be on the team long enough. We could probably find his replacement. Fries definitely isn't a long-term piece. He's not anything bad, but not anything too crazy. But I think even a 70 overall is fine for your offensive line if he can play well enough. And then right tackle, we've got Brian O'Neill, pretty long tenured Minnesota Viking. He's got only star development. Not too sold on him. I didn't look at his stats, so I forgot to look at his stats, but that's all fine. I'm all fine with having him there, but he is in his 30s now, so it's not gonna get better. So at some point we are going to have to find his replacement. I don't really know if our two backups really fit the build for what I want for our right tackle position, but that's more something we have to wait and see. Now, what I'm most excited to talk about is the defense, and we'll start off with Dallas Turner, our left edge rusher. He's only in year 3, and he's already got superstar development, which is kind of insane. Last season is not the most amazing season to write home about for a player being superstar development, but pretty solid for the age that he's at. So I'm kind of looking forward for him to really develop into hopefully one of our best edge rushers, kind of to another player. We have Van Ginkel kind of player, but even better than that. Hopefully up into like a Miles Turner, Jared Verse, Aaron Donald kind of guy. You have Ingram, Dawkins, and Batty in the back. I'm more leaning towards Ingram Dawkins kind of sticking around, being our second edge rusher, because I doubt we'll have all 3 of them. His attributes, not too bad, not anything too jarring. I'm pretty interested in Dawkins being the backup. Obviously, if something happens to Turner, pray that he doesn't get hurt, but it can obviously happen. This is the NFL. But I'm praying Dallas Turner. I'm really interested in a lot of his defense. The defense is what I'm most excited about this team, even though the defense is pretty low rated for the Vikings. I think overall it's a 77 or 78, I believe. Speaking of Van Ginkel, here he is. He's still on the team. Still one of the older players on the squad. He has been consistently solid for the most part for Minnesota since he's joined. I think he's been slightly better in a Minnesota uniform than in a Miami uniform. Not to say he was bad in Miami, but he's been a good acquisition for Minnesota, being a solid mentor and a solid piece for the defense, albeit the defense has not been amazing in the same time frame that Van Ginkel has been here. But long-term piece, not so much, but I think he'll be a solid mentor for anyone we have in the back. I'm really interested in Chambliss more so than Richter, believe it or not. Chambliss, he already does have 1 sack he got last year. Richter doesn't have any in the 2 years that he's already played. And even though Chambliss is lower overall, I don't really like to take ratings too hard. I don't really try to put that as the deciding factor, because any player can get a lot better if playing well enough. The difference also is Richter has 1 year as opposed to Chambliss has 2. Van Ginkel also has 1 year. There's no guarantee we resign him given his age. But the window is still open for him. Now, I think the most exciting part that I want to talk about the defense. You have a lot of defensive tackles, and Jalen Redmond does lead the charge. 1-year deal. He has been pretty okay for Minnesota. I don't love having Jalen Redmond personally in terms of definitely his contract. Stats are fine. Last year he was okay. Coming into year 3, obviously because he wasn't a top rookie in the draft, doesn't really have a longer 10-year deal, and that's why he has 1 year left. He is 27. I don't see him getting too much better unless he breaks out this year at some point, but I don't think that's honestly gonna happen. And that could just be me being a hater, but I don't have a whole lot of belief in Jalen Redmond right now. So he's likely just gonna have his 1 year. We're probably just gonna let him go, but again, we don't know how he's gonna play, but that's just where my head is at with Jalen Redmond. But the 2 guys I really wanted to talk about for this defense, Caleb Banks and Dominic Orange, both of them being hidden development, and they're also both fairly somewhat similar in play. They both have similar contracts, being high rookie candidates we got. The Vikings really went heavy on building up their defense. I think they did a pretty solid job, especially with the defensive line. This defensive line is not supremely strong. You got Dallas Turner, but you don't have much after that. Andrew Van Ginkel does have an expiring deal. So I think Banks and Orange are really good next up candidates. Like I said, they're very similar in their attributes. I don't watch a lot of college football, so don't ask me how good or bad these guys are, but just based on positional value and just how they look in terms of their attributes, I think they'll be really solid future pieces for this defense. I'm actually really excited to see how these guys play, especially in the preseason, because they might not get a whole lot of play during the regular season. It just kind of depends on where they're at in the lineup, but definitely during the preseason, I'm really curious to see how these two will definitely perform. They're honestly the most interesting players on the defense to me outside of Turner, and I think even somewhat the secondary. Now, in terms of who I think could be a solid number 4, Taimani is kind of on my list as the highest candidate. I don't think it's a really dead set guy that I put in there. All these guys, Rodriguez, Taimani, Ludermilk, I think are really just going to have to compete for that number 4 spot. Unless we, in a different world, let Jalen Redmond go and release him, which I don't think we're going to just up and release him. I think we're still going to let him play. But I think it's the 4 spot, if there is a number 4 spot, is pretty open season for any of these guys. So they're really going to have to prove it on the defensive end, especially during the preseason. For our linebackers, we don't have anyone in the same position, as for some reason most teams don't. We got Blake Cashman, who's been in Minnesota for a little bit of time. For the past 2 years, he's had the most tackles in his career he's ever had with Minnesota, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. You could argue that's just him playing really good defense, but you also argue that just needs her on defense way too much. He's got 1 year left. He's not supremely old, but also not super young. And being normal developed means he's not really going to get much better than where he is now, especially at his age and given that he is a linebacker. So the future is not bright at this position until you get to Jack Galladay, sorry. Did I say Jack? I meant Jake. Jake Galladay, or Golday, however you say it. Now, funny enough, he's already got an increase in morale. Everyone has 50 morale. He has 56%. So already he's pretty happy seeming to be here. But he's also another player defensively that we have at hidden development. Now, do I think he's going to be any crazy development? That's possible, but I feel like not so much. I do like his stat pool, though. He is a slightly solid coverage player, which I am excited to kind of see how he can get in the mix in both pass coverage and rushing the quarterback. I feel like this team is more so built to play against the run than the pass. And I think with this position as well, we got Ivan Pace and Eric Wilson. Ivan Pace, who I do like quite a bit. He does only have 1 year left versus Wilson, who does have 3. But Wilson is a little bit on the older side at 31 versus Pace, who's about in his 20s, mid-20s. So Eric Wilson, we do have him for some time, which I think he'll be a solid older piece to have. I'm not against holding on to him for the long haul, especially since his trade value probably isn't really going to be there. But I do like Ivan Pace. We do have Jamal Adams, who again is another 30-year-old. Wilson, solid numbers all around. He's been in his career. I don't know. It's just, I'm not too sold on Wilson, but I don't hate seeing where he's at. But I am more pushing starting Ivan Pace over Wilson, kind of, believe it or not. Pace is a slightly better coverage player than Wilson is, and I think that's what's kind of gonna sell me. Pace is actually surprisingly a harder hitter than Eric Wilson, somewhat, with 85 hit power to Wilson's, I believe it was 82. Crazy high. I already forgot the numbers. I'm looking right at it. But I'm kind of sold on Ivan Pace. Jamal Adams, he's got started him. He's only got a year in his contract, and he is in his 30s. So again, he's probably someone that we won't keep for the long term. It just kind of doesn't really make sense. Start development's not going to hold up when you're over the age of 30, and you're not developing much. You're going to start regressing somewhat heavily at some point. The best of his years are kind of past him, because after his last year with Seattle, he hasn't really fit the bill of really going back to his old days. So again, Jamal Adams, he's a solid third option to have. Is he someone that we keep? Possibly not. Is he someone that we release? There is a possibility there. There's not really too much of a hit if we do let him go. I think someone else could end up picking him up in the long haul, but right now, I don't see Jamal Adams as being a solid piece. But again, you never know. I think Pace or Wilson or Adams are going to be competing for that number 2 spot for sure. I think there's a lot of competitive battles on this team. and I think that's kind of one of them if you really want to talk about it. Now for the secondary, the last part of the team, we got Byron Murphy leading the charge. I thought I skipped for some reason. Byron Murphy leading the charge. I actually kind of like Byron Murphy. He's not a terrible corner. He is pretty fast. I think this cornerback room is actually pretty somewhat fast. He's got at least 2 interceptions every year he's played with Minnesota. So he's been pretty consistent in coverage. I do like to kind of see that from Byron Murphy. He's kind of always led the charge for the Minnesota defense, kind of being the captain more so for the secondary, and I think he'll be able to do that again with Isaiah Rodgers next to him. Isaiah Rodgers has only got a year left. He's not really going to be here too long, at least in terms of what contract he currently has. Again, I think he's pretty solid. He actually is slightly faster than Byron Murphy, so we might have to pin him against a lot of the faster receivers in the league. But again, not a long-term piece. He's only here for a year. I could see myself re-signing him, but again, the cornerback room in the league is pretty vast, so I'm not against letting him go as well. Then we got James Pierre. Well, I cannot see. I can't see. But he's been a long-term Pittsburgh Steeler. He's only ever really played for Pittsburgh. He seemingly missed a year. I don't know how accurate that is. This is technically his first year in Minnesota. Now for the fourth corner, I'm really liking Demings, Charles Demings. He could be a solid number 4. I think the biggest issue with this lineup that I see is that there's only one man-to-man scheme guy, at least in terms of the top 4 corners. We got a lot of zone coverage players, and I think that's not really going to fit. We need more of a one-on-one guy. So I'm looking at Demings and even Vaughn and Allen more so than McLaughlin, who I don't hate, but I'm not the biggest fan, especially when all we have are zone coverage corners, and we need guys that can kind of play one-on-one coverage, given the receiver cornerback update to the game, which I have not seen much of yet. I think man-to-man coverage is going to be a lot more important in the grand scheme of things. So McLaughlin, I think I've already kind of told myself that he's probably not going to be on the team after the preseason. So I'm really more focused on the other guys around him. Now, free safety is probably the weakest, at least in terms of rating, the weakest position we have. We got Jay Ward leading the charge at free safety. Is he anything bad? Absolutely not. But I'm looking more so at Jackson. Jackson kind of fits the build. They're also kind of similar in some strands of areas. So I don't really see Ward really being the guaranteed starter or Jackson. Thomas is kind of in the back. As someone we could start, but this position is kind of an open book for any of these guys to get the starting haul for the regular season. So no one kind of fits that build right now. I'm leaning more towards Thomas and Ward kind of battling it out more so than Jackson even really being involved in that positional battle. And then finally at strong safety, we are going to look at the punter and kicker, by the way. We got Josh Metellus. He's been on this team for a while. He's been pretty overall consistent for this squad. I do like Josh Metellus as one of our better secondary players next to the cornerback room, which I think is pretty okay. But I think the secondary honestly is probably weaker than the defensive line. If you ask me if I think the linebacker room is the weaker part, then the secondary, then the defensive line. But Josh Metellus still has 3 years left with us. He is around his late 20s. He's still got time to be a solid quote-unquote centerpiece to this defense. But we do have someone in the back I'm pretty excited about. Another hidden development player in Jacoby Thomas, who was another rookie. We picked him up in the draft as well. Don't ask me where, because I didn't look before I started this video. But Jacoby Thomas is a really good backup to have, especially for where Josh Metellus is at in his career. Thomas is in his early, 22? I can't see, so I'm pretty sure it's 22. We can hopefully see his development rate by the end of the year, but it might be the end of next year. I can't really confirm that. We have another Jay Thomas on the team, but don't worry about him because he's not going to be on this lineup. 9 out of 10. So I do like the Jacoby Thomas as a backup safety to kind of fill in for Josh Metellus if he does get injured or if he just does not play. For our kicker, we do have Will Rijkaard. Early in his career, he wasn't really all that great. He got better over the course of season 2. Hopefully, it doesn't all crumble in season 3. And they've had Johnny Hecker as our kicker, who's been, or punter, sorry. But overall, this team, I say the defense has a brighter future than the offense. The offense does have its fair share of holes in it. Outside of Justin Jefferson, you really don't have much, right? And then for the defense, it's not great now, but in the future down the line, I think it will be better than the offense with a lot of the pieces we got. Now, a big reason why I picked the Vikings is because of the division they sit in. The Vikings sit in what I think is the most competitive division in football in the NFC North. You got the Cardiac Bears, which surprised everybody, finished I think 11-6 and pushed the Rams back to almost making it to the NFC Championship. And they beat the Packers twice, and there's not a lot of teams that can say they can do that in 1 year. But in terms of the Bears, they got quite a bit of talent. They got DeAndre Swift. They got a lot of names. Caleb Williams, who in year 3 is a 90 overall with superstar X Factor. Year 1 rookie year was pretty solid, and year 2 was a lot better. Took less sacks, was more poisonous passes, and just stayed overall really consistent. And even though this team lost DJ Moore to the Bills, they got some future draft picks, some nice draft picks, and I think they're overall still pretty good with a lot of younger talent they have in Romeo Dunza and Luther Burden and now Colston Loveland, relying on him a little bit more in terms of the offensive skill position. So I think the Bears are still just as crazy as ever. I'd even like Ray McLeod and Thomas kind of being in that receiving room if they do hold on to them. And the defense isn't really too bad in itself. I think the Bears are pretty stacked and capable of maybe making another playoff run. This team is pretty strong. And not to mention the Packers, which the Packers tend to always be somewhere in the mix at some point in time. You remember, obviously, I don't think people forgot. They picked up Micah Parsons last year, and he had a solid season with Green Bay in year number 1 as a Green Bay Packer. Does it beat any of his Dallas seasons? You could argue that. I mean, he did make the playoffs, though, and he was a big reason why they did. And Jordan Love has always been a very consistent quarterback. He's got superstar development. Even though he's not like one of the most talked about quarterbacks, he's, like I said, he's always been very consistent. Not a guy that turns the ball over a lot, a guy that can make some big plays when he needs to, but a guy that isn't really brought up in terms of star talent. But this defense is still stacked with guys like Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney, Javon Hargrave, Jaden Reed, even Edrin Cooper. This team just has way too much. And even I want to say Devontae Wyatt, I can't read, but this team just has too much. But the Packers are not talked about as like a crazy team in the league, which I think is a little disrespectful. And then finally, the Lions. The Lions have probably the funnest story in the NFL. Came from being a team that was regarded as absolute trash, and now they're competing in the NFL playoffs almost every year. Last season may not have been the case, but I like to call last season as a fluke year. With guys like Jared Goff, Jameer Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, this team is pretty stacked in itself, and mostly because Jared Goff has stayed very consistent. He's looked really good in a Detroit uniform, which it's crazy to think about how the Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff trade worked for both parties, since the Rams are now Super Bowl contenders with the addition of Myles Garrett, and the Lions are going to be as competitive as ever and could still win the NFC given how stacked the NFC actually is. Jared Goff has always been a very consistent commodity here in Detroit. I think it's going to stay true. The quarterback room is pretty stacked in the NFC North. Jameer Gibbs, he's a 98, not a 99, but a 98 overall superstar X Factor. So obviously, by the end of the year, he will hit 99 overall because, again, he's just that close to that number. But, this team is still pretty stacked. I like Isaac Tesla a lot. They got Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta with the receiving core. They have Aiden Hutchinson leading the defense with guys like Brian Branch. This team is also very stacked in where they're at. The NFC North in general is stacked to the point where I think the Vikings kind of stand out as being to me, just the odd team out. Not being supremely terrible, but definitely being the worst of the 4. Hence why I picked them, because I think the Vikings might end up losing this division all in its entirety, being the worst team. Now for matchups this year, matchups are pretty interesting. We lead off against the Packers and Bears in weeks 1 and 2 respectively. So already the first 2 games aren't really going to be that easy. Then we got Baker Mayfield in week 3 before following up in weeks 4 and 5 against two teams that a lot of people might consider to be the worst teams in the league, in the Dolphins and the Saints. Dolphins on paper should be an easy win, and so will the Saints. But again, no game in the NFL is ever easy. Then we followed it up with a pretty early bye week in week number 6, which I think is fine. An early break is fine. And then we'll head back home to US Bank Stadium to take on the Indianapolis Colts, last year's franchise team, which I think is still pretty okay. They just need to figure things out. And then we'll get our first look at the Lions in week number 8. Then it kind of just gets worse from there. We got Josh Allen and the Bills in week number 9. You have the Packers again in week 10, the 49ers in week 11, which it's a stacked next few games. I think this is a tough 5-game stint. And then we have the Falcons as well. I think the Falcons are going to be a pretty hard one, even with Tua, which, as it's recording, Tua had a pretty bad first preseason game with the Falcons. But again, the rest of the team looks pretty strong. But then we follow up against the Panthers, and then Thursday we have to take on the AFC champion, defending New England Patriots. So again, this schedule continues to get scary. Then we have the matchup with the Lions, and after that on Saturday, which the Lions is also a Sunday night game. Also, 49ers game will be Mexico City, so how about that? Then we have the Commanders on Saturday, followed by the Jets, and we end off the year against the Cardiac Bears at home. So I think outside of teams like the Jets, Dolphins, Saints, and maybe even the Commanders, this is a pretty tough schedule. This is not a very easy schedule to really get by, especially when we're already in a competitive division. And topping it all off, you have to play against Brock Purdy, Josh Allen, and the Falcons, I think this is a pretty tough schedule moving forward for us, but that's what's going to make this year exciting. But that'll do it for episode 1 of the Minnesota Vikings franchise. I hope you guys enjoyed. I've been waiting pretty restlessly for this video to come out, and just for this game in general. I know I always say this, but I promise that the content will be a lot more consistent this year. I know I've said it all the time, but again, I promise that will be the case. I really want to get more content for Madden out this year as opposed to last year. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you did like the video and just like the content in general. This is Minnesota Mafia, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.